My dad creates his home-based food venture, and he's selling food. And, you know, I'm part of the business. You have to work. There's no choice. You got to put all hands on deck. You have to work. You have to eat. You have to work. So as I get older and I go to school, my dad tells me, I graduate from high school, and he tells me, oh, you got a choice. You go to work or you go to school. Well, that was a very simple choice. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to school. I don't want to work. You know, so I went to school. I was there for a while. I was going to become an architect. While I was there, what do I do? What do I do? Back in the 80s, there was a Coke Wars. There was always the Coke and Pepsi challenges. So they give you a Coke and they give you Pepsi, you taste it, and, you know, which do you prefer? Well, if you take that into the restaurant business, Coke and Pepsi were fighting for fountain service business at the time. So the Coke guys would come over and they would offer you X, Y. We're going to give you Coke, we'll give you a rebate, we'll give you merchandising stuff. And then Pepsi would come over. When that was happening, I said, wait a minute, this guy offered me this, then I'm going to tell, and I was young at the time, I must have been like 18. I said, I'm going to tell Pepsi that Coke offered me X, Y, and Z. I did that, and then Coke offered me more, and then I was going back and forth until you get to a certain point where they don't want to, you know, they don't offer you more. And I told my friend about it, and I said, he goes, hey, Raul, he says, I think you're in the wrong field. You should go into business. I go, really? I go, my parents, they have a small restaurant, and that's why I just said, oh, maybe. So then I switched over from architecture to business, and that was a whole different change. I started seeing stuff, working with numbers. I enjoyed the numbers. Went to USC, was part of the USC entrepreneurial studies. It was an entrepreneur program, and then you had to create a feasibility study, and you had to create a business plan. I'll never forget, I was in class the first day. There was about 300 students in there. I walk in there, we're in a small business in East Los Angeles. We're serving up goat, and we're doing very well, in my opinion. We're doing very well. And they ask, okay, tell us your story. What do you want to do? I remember this one guy came up and says, oh, my parents own a donut shop. And when you create donuts, they punch a hole in the donuts and the little donut comes out. We're going to sell those. Really, basically what he was doing was everybody that had a small business idea, they all stood up. And luckily I was a little shy. I didn't put my hand up. I was just listening to him, and I said, okay, at the end of the class, he says, all you guys that are standing up, you guys can leave. This is a world-class businesses only. You don't belong in this class. If you want to come back, you got to write me an essay telling me how you're going to make your business into a world-class business that's going to create jobs. I'm like, oh, I said, wow. I stood back, and so my thought was, okay, restaurant, wow, I got to do this. So then I had to change my spin. So I said, I'm going to do food processing. I went up to this class and he goes, what do you do? I'm in the restaurant business. I'm going to start canning or serving the birria in cans or packaging. He goes, there's 3 certainties in life, he tells me. He goes, okay, what's that? He says, there's death, there's taxes, and there's restaurant closures. You still want to be in the restaurant business? And he's right. If you look back at all the older restaurants, they all go belly up. Is it because maybe the principals died? You guys remember Bob's Big Boy tried to make a resurgence, but it left. It used to be Grinders. I think there's only one Grinders left. So restaurants eventually fade away and they fall off to the abyss. And that's what he was referring to. What can you do to make it different so you can stand out above the rest? What's going to put you in that peak? There's certain types of restaurants, and people who are out there could probably vouch for this. You got your community restaurants that serves just the community. They'll serve your neighbors, people who work in the area. And you have other restaurants that stand out a little more. They start bringing people in from other small cities, people that move out, they come back and they eat that. And you have your other ones that are able to draw people from other cities, other states. So there's like a hierarchy of restaurants and where you're going to position yourself. What are you going to do to be able to be that one that's on top that can bring or have that to pull people from different cities? And I saw that when we had our restaurant, people come in from other cities. They come in from Las Vegas. Hey, you should open in Las Vegas. Hey, you should open in XYZ. They come in from the cities. When they were in the area, they would move out. East LA was ground zero. So when the immigrants would come into the U.S., they would come into East LA because this is where everybody spoke Spanish. Oh, you got to go there. That's the spot. They would come here, and then eventually they would, because there was no room anymore. It was saturated. They would move out to the neighboring cities, and they would come and visit us. I said, wow. Look, I look back and I said, we had that pulling power because we had a unique dish, which was birria de chivo. Not too many people were selling it. Maybe even still a handful of places that sold it. That's what kind of inspired me to say, you know what, I want to be in the restaurant business. And I tell people the story, and I don't even know my friends realized what they did that day. Graduated from college, we'd go dressed up in suits. We had presentations. We'd go in there, we present. We had to present our business plan, what we're going to do, and during the course of the year, it's every other day you had to wear a suit and tie and give a professional presentation. So recruiters came out. I remember back then it was ADP, Enterprise. It was the big six back then. The accounting firms would come out and they would recruit people. So we graduated. Fast forward, I said, you know what? I had $7,000. So what am I going to do? I said, you know what? I'm going to go into the restaurant business. But I tried to create a concept that wasn't ready for its time. I tried to do fast casual. I wanted people to come order and then I would take them the food to the table. Well, it didn't work. No, we want full service. This is meat again. You got to serve it like you do back home. And I didn't realize at the time, like, wait, what are these people doing? Why? I want to serve it to them this way. It's more efficient for me. It's less cost, XYZ. But it didn't work out that way. So I had to change my whole concept during the process, doing stuff. My friends came to visit me one day. They were there and they said, oh, what are you doing in the restaurant business? They're in suits. They got their suit and ties, nice shoes. Here I am, jeans, shirt, and an apron. And this is actually the kitchen here. My friends looked at me and said, what are you doing here? We'll get you a job. I said, no, I'm gonna be a cook. Scratch my head. I said, oh man, what am I doing here? Is this what I want to do? And you could, if you're the outside looking in, you'll see a guy in suits and the guy in an apron, which one went to college? And then, you would pick, obviously, the guys that they had suits. I had an apron on. And they say, wow, what are you doing here? Is this what you went to school for? You went to USC to become a cook? Remember, back then, cook wasn't a prestigious job. It was like, whoa, and I was actually cooking, washing dishes, and doing other things. So I sit there and I scratch my head and I say, we'll get you a job, bro. We'll get you a job. Come on. I can get you into human resources. And I'm there sitting there and I'm thinking about it. I said, wow. I look at myself, I look at them and I say, no, I'm gonna I'll stick it out. I'm gonna try it, see how far I can go with this. And I'll never forget that day. It was like one of those, you get to the road and you take left or you take a right. Where are you gonna go? Luckily I chose, I think it might be not the correct choice, but it wasn't an easy road. It was kind of difficult. So how do I correlate that? Well, the way I was able to do it was one day I was walking into the dining area and you hear this clutter, you hear all the noises, and then I started like fine tuning like an old radio. You turn the station and I was tuning to people and people started talking about the food. Remember this, remember that. I'm like, wow, I did that, which got me excited. That's what kept me in the restaurant business, propels me to keep on doing what I'm doing, serving this dish. And then you see somebody get a plate and then they put it in their mouth and they think, wow, that's like the best compliment. Stay tuned for more and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep up with our Birria journey.